Hello, my name is Marcus, and today I'm going to show you how I would create some placeholder assets or just even final assets even within After Effects using only solids, such as these, as you can see here. So let's get started. First, I would just create a new composition. We can just call this ball, something like this. Maybe even make it square, like 600 times 600, something like this, and the rest is fine. Okay, there we go. So first I'm going to create the base of this entire asset. So first of all, come to Layer, New, Solid, and let's make it something like a dark gray or something like this, approximately. And let's just call it Base. There we go. Now if you select a specific layer and go up into the mask tool and double click it, it's going to make a mask that fills out the entire frame with that specific mask, which is kind of cool. So here we have the base here. So let's start duplicating this layer and playing around with the shading. So I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-Y to modify this existing layer and give it maybe something a little bit more brighter, something like this. Let's just press New. You can call it whatever you want, but right now the name is not really that important. So I'm gonna press M to bring up the masks. I'm gonna duplicate this original mask that I have and set it to intersect. So see, now the masks underneath will only show wherever this intersect mask is, which is kind of cool. So if we move intersect up here and we start to feather this bad boy out, already now we can start to see it starts to get some shape. You can even decrease the expansion a bit, maybe even feather it a little bit more so we get this nice shape. So let's duplicate this one right here and let's add some darkness to this. So I can Ctrl-Shift-Y and let's make it even darker, something quite dark like this. There we go. Press New. Press M to bring up the masks, and instead of intersect I'm going to set it to subtract, so we only get the dark side on this right side of the shape. So I'm going to just play around with this. I'm going to maybe expand it a bit more so we only get dark on this down in the corner here mostly. You can still get some dark around. Now we still want to get some nice rim light from the side, so I'm just going to Control-A and then click on the little arrow to minimize them. So I'm just going to duplicate this bad boy, this top one again, this black one, and I'm going to make it quite bright, something like this, and New, and press M twice to bring up all the mask properties. And see, now we're just going to squeeze this bad boy all the way over here. We're going to expand it until we just get this nice little highlight, play around with the feather, just until we get this nice little highlight, and let's duplicate it again. And on this bright bad boy here, we press M twice. We're going to start to play around with like some even more powerful highlights. So I'm going to take this this mask up here. I'm going to set it to intersect like the one at the beginning, and I'm just going to decrease the expansion, something like this. So see, already now we're starting to get a sharper highlight on the ball, so it starts to get some nice shape. And let's play around. We can even make a sharper highlight, so we can duplicate the top layer here, Ctrl-Shift-Y, and make it quite bright, something like this. New, press M twice, and we're actually gonna delete these two masks. I'm going to hide it so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to zoom in by pressing Z, so bring up the zoom tool, click on the screen, and I'm going to press G as a shortcut for the mask tool. I'm just going to make this nice window-ish shape here, because we're gonna pretend like this is the reflection of a window. So we got a little bit something like this. Now we can activate the layer again, and we can bring up the mask settings and just feather it out a smidge, something like this. You can make it as sharp or as soft as you want. So now I'm just going to select all these layers and minimize them. So now we're going to apply some color to this bad boy. And I'm going to do this by creating a new layer, Control-Y, which is the same as going up into layer and creating a new solid. I'm going to call this color. So see, this color can be whatever you want. I'm just going to do a nice gorgeous red here. And I'm going to set it to overlay. So see, right now it's just going to take all the values, all the luminance values of these layers and apply color based on those values. And of course, right now it's going beyond the ball. We don't want that. So the top layer here, we activate this little T icon, which stands for transparency. And it's only going to apply this layer to whatever has transparency underneath. And if we look at the alpha channel, you can see it's only applying it where there is no alpha, basically. So see, already now we got some gorgeousness. And if you think the overlay effect has too high contrast, you can set it to soft light instead. See, it gets a little bit of a softer shading. Although I must admit, I quite like the overlay. You can always play around with this since it is kind of cracking here. You can see the highlight is actually kind of breaking there, especially if we increase the exposure, you can see it's cracking. So you can play around with this. You can either decrease the saturation or the brightness of the red until it becomes smooth. You can see here, it becomes quite smooth, something like this. Or you can always apply some grain or something on top to remove that. And you can create all kinds of shapes. As you can see here, I also made a cylinder, a trapezoid, and I can quickly show you how I would do like the cylinder. So this is the exact same concept as the ball. I'm just creating it new solid. There we go. This can be the base. You can press Q until you get whatever shape you want. I'm here in the mask. I'm just going to make like this. So this is not going to be perfect by any means, but you can quickly see how just by creating a few simple masks, you already get some nice shapes. I'm holding Alt down while having the pen tool so I can modify the curves of this, which is really nice. So see, already now we have a decent shape here. I'm just going to duplicate this bad boy. I'm going to make it dark. Something like this. Press M to bring up the masks. I'm just going to zoom out here, press Q to bring up the mask again, and I'm going to subtract from this initial mask. So you can see here, just subtracting, something like this, so we get that nice shape. Something along these lines. And you want the top to have its own color. So you can just duplicate the bottom one, take it up here, and maybe just delete. If you have the pen tool selected and press Control, you can delete the existing points of a mask, which is quite nice. And then you can bring this bad boy up here. So you can just get this, make this top shape here. See, already now it's starting to look like a cylinder, which is quite nice. And if you want like gradients across a specific surface, so like on this top surface, you don't want it to be completely flat, you can apply a ramp, gradient ramp, double click on that bad boy, and you can just move these gradient points wherever you want. So I'm gonna say one here and one there. I'm gonna take this color and pick whip to the original layer's color, and same with the other one here, and just make this one maybe a little bit darker, and the other one a little brighter. So already now you start to get a little bit more of a shape, right? And the cool thing is you can actually you would be able to rig this up a bit if you wanted to. So let's say we duplicate this original shape, and I'll call this original. And we set this bad boy to stencil alpha. So if you, for example, link these two bottom ones to this top part here that we created, I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-H to hide the user interface. But see, now if I animate this top piece, it looks like it's actually animating this entire cylinder, simply because I parented these two bottom layers to this top layer. So you can animate them, several of these cylinders at once, and make it look like they're 3D cylinders coming up from the ground doing different things. Flat surfaces are even easier. The only thing is you have to be aware of the perspective, right? So Ctrl-Y to create a new solid. We can just create a quick shape here, something like this, really trapezoid-ish shape. Just gonna duplicate this bad boy. I'm gonna make it dark instead, quite dark. You know what? I'm gonna make it brighter instead. There we go. And you can basically just move these mask points until it matches your perspective of the trapezoid, something like this. Duplicate again, make this even brighter, something like this. Bam, bam, ding dong. And we just move these points to match whatever perspective we're trying to do, something like this. And you can apply the same gradient technique as before. Double click on that bad boy. You can just apply the same color, but slightly brighter. And now you can just control where they start, something like this. And you can iterate upon this idea quite easily, right? You can maybe just make a new layer, Ctrl-Y. I'm gonna make a sphere again, double click. And now I'm just gonna play around with this. So I'm gonna set it to subtract. I'm gonna Control T to scale this layer here. I'm gonna zoom it in, something like this. I'm gonna do the exact same thing again, duplicate and Control T and take it over the way in here. And you can even like play around, Q again to get the mask tool. There we go. Have like a line in the middle, something like this. And you can even create some fake 3D shapes by simply, once you have a shape that you like, you can duplicate it. You can make it darker, something like this. Quite dark, maybe something like this. And if you duplicate this bottom layer and then set this darker layer to alpha matte inverted, so if you move this top layer, you can see it almost looks like there is casting a shadow on the inside. So if we apply a fast blur, something like this, you could also just blur the masks or feather the masks, but sometimes it's nice to just use an effect. And you can duplicate this, you can apply the same concept, duplicate it again, make the dark one quite bright instead, so you get a highlight, something like this. And we can just move it the other direction, so we get like this nice highlights on top of it. And maybe you can blur it even less if you wanted to have a sharper highlight. See, so already now it's not like it's real 3D, but you at least get the sense that you could use this for something, right? You could have these type of shapes quickly in After Effects and they look quite decent. And you can keep adding as much detail as you want to them to get to that whatever point you want to do, right? See, already now it's not looking horrible, especially if we play around with this stuff. If you want to receive a mail whenever there are new templates, advanced templates, tools, presets, courses, etc., then I would recommend joining the newsletter. You can find the link in the description. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'm looking forward to see what you guys can create with these techniques. And if you're interested in other animation tutorials, I have one here on the left. Have a wonderful day with some cheese.